Hello, this is George Demaree for another version of Your Money Matters. And remember what we do for Your Money Matters. It's real important. You know, the most important things in your life are God, and God's always got to be in the forefront of everything you do and every decision you make. Family, making sure that you do the right things as related to your family, being a good husband, a good wife, good parents, and just mainly good citizens. And finally, understanding how to manage your money. Most people do not understand how to manage their money. I just love that Sharon Bell months ago asked me to be the host of Money Matters, to share with people better ways of, again, managing their money. So what we do, number one, is we promote financial literacy. Again, the great majority of Americans are not financially literate. They just don't know how to handle their money. Number two, we look for ways for you to improve your employment situation, business opportunities. There's money out there to be made if you're willing to do what it takes in order to make that money. You can make your life better just by looking around many times. And we're going to share those opportunities in weeks to come. Third, we champion strategic thinking. How do you think about your money? How do you make decisions when you spend your money? Do you make money by making spontaneous decisions? We want, to the best of our ability, to get you away from making spontaneous decisions as it relates to your money. Number four, the importance of credit worthiness. That credit number. Money costs money. Now let me ask, if you could purchase an item at 2 or 3% or purchase an item at 10 to 15%, what makes sense? Obviously, 2 and 3% compared to 10 to 15%. If you have a good credit number, and that credit number, this has got to be your goal, is to be over 700, then you can purchase what you want to purchase at a very, very competitive rate. And finally, and this is just as important as anything when it comes to your money, is getting out of debt. Could you imagine life without debt? Could you? Could you imagine life with no debt? Could you imagine life and you not being concerned about the mail that comes in every day? Wow. You can get there, and we're going to talk about it if you work on it. But today on Money Matters, I decided that I'd do something a little different. That I would address some of the most frequently asked questions as it relates to money. I have discovered since doing Money Matters over the last 8 to 10 months that when I run into folks on the street, they ask questions, different kinds of money questions. I've even found people giving me phone calls. I've had people in all different demographics saying, George, can you help me? What kind of decisions can you make? How do you invest money? That's another. We could do a whole different program on how to invest your money. But again, today, we're going to address the most frequently asked questions as it relates to the program thus far. Question number one, and probably the most frequently asked question: how do I get started? Well, first of all, I'm going to share with you an old cliche that you've heard thousands of times. And that's that you cannot continue to do the same things over and over and over again and get different results. You just can't. If you are a person who is going to abuse credit cards and you're going to continue to abuse credit cards, then there's no sense in you even taking the time to even explore money matters. So the first thing in getting started is when you are sick and tired of being sick and tired of not having enough money to make ends meet. You get sick and tired of creditors calling you and asking you about unpaid bills. So the first thing that you need to do before anything else is to change how you think and be willing to make positive changes on how you handle your money. Number 3, stay away from the haters. Stay away from folks who don't have your best interest at heart. Do not be around folks who say you can't. You can do anything you put your mind to. You pray on it. You ask God for help, but you surround yourself with people who can help you. You can get out of debt and you can put yourself in. When you put yourself in this position, your entire family in a better position as it relates to their money. Again, stay away from discouragers. Stay away from those people who are in debt slavery, who want to keep you in debt slavery. Watch these marketing campaigns. Do you realize that 96% of every African American has a smartphone right here? And that African Americans are more likely to react on an ad that they see on a smartphone than any other demographic. That's spontaneous buying. Before you buy any big ticket item that you just happen to be on a whim, again, we've talked about this for weeks, give it 24 hours. Sleep on it. If you wake up the next morning and you think you need it, maybe buy it then. And finally, as it relates to how you get started, pray on it. Pray on it. Ask God to help you. Ask God to give you an additional piece of strength that you are going to make better decisions as it relates to your money. And sometimes, ask somebody for help. Again, I've had people to give me a call and ask for help. My 3 children never make a financial, and I'm going to say hardly ever, make a financial decision without calling their father. I've already made the mistakes. So why should they make some of the same mistakes that I made when I first started to make some money? So all 3 of them make sure that, hey, Dad, what do you think about investing money? What do you think about buying a house? What do you think? It's one thing I've embedded in their brain their entire adult life: stay away from credit cards. Stay away from credit cards. Question number 2. And there's a lot more than one, but let's go to question number 2. How do I pay off debt? Well, number 1, ask for help. Ask for help. There are things that people you can go to, websites you can go to that can help you to pay off debt. One of the things that you really need is a plan. What kind of plan can you develop? I really like Dave Ramsey's information, and I like his baby steps. Now, I'm not saying that you have to use it verbatim, but it is a good, at least, benchmark on what you do, how you increase your financial well-being, and how you pay off debt. In Dave Ramsey's baby steps, the first step, he says, is to create an emergency fund. Create an emergency fund of at least $1,000. Well, how do you do that? take $100, $50, depending on when you get paid. If you get paid weekly, take $50 a pay period. If you get paid 2 times a month, take $150 per pay period and put it in a savings account. Create an emergency fund. Number 2 in this baby steps was getting out of debt. Getting out of debt. Well, how do you get out of debt? There's basically 2 techniques. One is snowball. Many of you may have already heard about snowball. And what you do in snowball is you go to the debt. If you have 3 pieces of credit card debt, you go, and maybe another loan. Let's say you have 4. You go to the debt with the smallest balance, and you put as much extra money as you have on that until you pay it off. And then you go to the one with the next smallest balance until you get to the largest one, and you can take all the money that you were spending on those other 3 debts, put it toward the one with the largest amount of debt, and eventually pay that debt off. When you pay off a credit card or a piece of debt, what kind of feeling do you get? A feeling of accomplishment. What I like about the snowball effect is it gives you that feeling of accomplishment. I said one of the ways that you persevere during tough times is setting mini goals. And the reason that I love mini goals is because mini goals give you a sense of accomplishment. It's like as long as those goals are helping to get you to the end result that you're trying to get to. So do it. Next, when you want to pay off debt, make sure you write it down. Write down, we talked about budgets last week. Write down all of your expenses versus your income and look at it. If it's not on paper, it's not somewhere on a computer, not online, someplace you can get to it and see it, you will not attack it. You just won't. Go to payoff calculators. There are so many free. Don't cost you a dime. There are so many apps that you can use that will help you pay off your debt, that you can develop a plan to get it done. You have got to be determined that in this year, in 2021, you're going to say, before we get to 2022, I'm going to pay off all my debt based on these principles that we have. Baby step number 3 is to continue to, actually baby step number 4 was to put money in some kind of retirement account. Got to save money. The only way to have long-term financial security is saving money. And we're going to talk about where to invest money and how to invest money because there are tons of ways. I was talking to a very successful guy just this weekend. Very successful, lived a good life, lives in a nice place. Said he didn't really like the stock market. I thought that was a little different, but that's okay. He needed more security, as opposed to some people who love putting their money in the stock market and who doesn't mind taking risk. Snowball effect. The other way of paying off debt is called avalanche. And avalanche is you go to the piece of debt that has the highest interest rate and you attack that. Because remember, high interest rates cost money. So both are effective ways of paying off debt. I just personally like the snowball effect a little better because it does give you that sense of accomplishment. Next, most frequently asked questions is, how do I spend my stimulus money? You know, a ton of Americans have been getting stimulus money, and there's another stimulus check coming. How do you use it? Remember, it ain't going to happen very often. The federal government is not going to bail us out every time there's a crisis. And please, to the best of your ability, do not 100% depend on what the federal government is going to do as it relates to your money. You have got to be in control of how you do it. Well, the stimulus money is the first thing that you have to make sure that's covered is your four walls. It's what Dave Ramsey calls the four walls. One is shelter. You gotta have that covered. Second is food. You gotta have it covered. Third is utilities. And the fourth is transportation. If this stimulus check is helping you to satisfy those four walls, then you make sure that you do that first. If by chance your four walls are covered and you didn't need the stimulus check to do it, and there's a number of people who didn't, then you take that money and you work on paying off debt. Pay off a credit card. Pay it off. 2021 is going to be the year that we pay off all our debt up to our mortgage payment. And then once you get there, then there's some techniques that you can use to also pay off your mortgage payment. Whenever you add more money to the principal is the amount that you owe on any debt. If that principal is $50,000, remember when you make a mortgage payment, let me tell you what comes out of that mortgage payment. You got principal, you got escrow, and what the escrow does is it takes care of your taxes and insurance, and then you have interest. The more you put on your principal, it lessens the amount of interest that you pay on that long-term debt. We'll talk about housing in a minute as well. So, number one, with your stimulus check, make sure that the four walls are covered. Number two, use it to pay off debt. Let me tell you what I don't want you to do. Do not use this stimulus check to create more debt. Well, how do you do that, George? How many people, when they get their income tax return, decide it's time for me to make a down payment on a car? Why do you think that auto dealers double up their advertising in February, March, and April? Why? Because they know that's when you get your income tax return. So on one side, you let your money come in one door. Let's say it's $3,000 or $4,000 or more. And then within days, you let it go out the other door. There are some auto dealers that will allow you to actually buy your car on a come, and they take your income tax return. No, you will never get out of debt if you think like that. Do not take extra money you get and create more debt. No, pay it off. Pay it off. Debt, make sure that your debt and expenses are covered. If all of it's covered, and you're in that kind of condition, then you take your money and invest it, or you add it to your emergency fund. Everybody needs an emergency fund. Again, I've said this in other weeks, 45%, this is regardless of ethnicity, 45% of every American in December 19, before the pandemic took off, did not have $1,000 saved. 80% of every American in America only had $5,000 or less saved. That is the reason, that is one of the two reasons that this pandemic was so devastating, is because the 79% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And let me share this little secret with you. It wasn't just for folks who didn't make a lot of money. Even people whose household incomes were $150,000 and $200,000 plus a year were in a terrible shape when they lost one paycheck. If losing one paycheck is going to be devastating to your family, then you cut back on something. You cut back on something, and you put some money away. A few weeks ago, right before the holidays, I said, how do you survive during the pandemic? What do you do? Well, one thing is you cut down expenses. You cut them down. Don't spend all that money on cable TV. It doesn't make sense. You've got to have an internet service. And there are services, depending on your income, that you can get that's not very costly. So I'm suggesting that an internet service many times is just as important as the heat and gas coming in your home, because you've got to be connected in this country now. But you don't need cable TV. If you can take that money, if it's costing you $200 or better per month, and you can take $125 of that money and put it in a savings account that's over the next 10 weeks or whatever can get you over $1,000, don't you think that makes a ton more sense than watching HBO? Absolutely it does. What we do at Money Matters is we help you to manage your money. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're one of those folks who's got a ton of money and doing what you need, go buy all the cars. I'm not saying don't live good. There's nothing in the Bible that says God does not want you to live good. Nothing says that. So on the contrary, God wants the best for you. He does. But remember, there are consequences for making bad decisions, and there are consequences for making good decisions. So that's what you do as it relates to your stimulus check. Next most asked question: how do I purchase a house for the first time? The great majority of time, the reason that people do not buy a home is who rent and been renting for years do not believe they can buy a home. Don't believe it again. Do not believe you can't do it. If you're paying between $900 and $800 and sometimes $2,000 a month for rent, listen to me, you can buy a home. And let me ask this. If you're paying rent, this is what you're really doing. You're paying somebody else's mortgage payment. You are helping your landlord to build wealth, and you at best is doing this. And more likely you're doing that because you're not using your money the best way. You can purchase a house. If you're rent, I was talking to a guy the other day, he's paying $1,500 a month for rent. My oldest son, a few years ago, was paying $1,500 for rent. I said, man, are you kidding me? Went, bought a house, guess what? Nice house. Almost with the same amount of money that he was paying for rent is what his mortgage payment is. So, number one, I only have this written down, but number one, believe that you can be a homeowner. That's what starts. Number two, now make a plan to get you there. Now, what has to be a part of the plan? Where do you want to live? Do some research. Where you want to live? Number two, Go to a mortgage lender. Develop a relationship with a banker. A few weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago, we had Raymond Smith in here from Park Community Federal Credit Union. Vice President. I mean, we've had O.C. Craig in here, who is a mortgage provider. We've had a number of mortgage providers here who are willing to help you to buy a home. But go and talk to these people. Develop a relationship with them. Know their first name. Remember, it's all about relationships. Develop a relationship with a banker. Do not be afraid of a bank. Many of us, and I understand why. It's the same reason that many of us are so apprehensive about taking the vaccine, because years ago, black people got burned. And black people got burned in banks years ago as well. But now, if you want to have some financial security, you need to have a relationship with a bank and a banker. Talk to them. They will tell you what you need. Understand your debt to income ratio. Tell you what that means in buying a house. It's your fixed debt divided into your income. So in that, the only thing they count your rent, they count your car payment, they count the payment on a loan or credit cards. They put that number together, they divide it by the number of how much money you make per month, and that's gross, and that's your debt to income ratio. They want to keep it, most lenders like keeping it under 40%. Some lenders will let you get away with it at about 43%. Let me tell you what that looks like. If you make about $19 an hour and you only work 8 hours a week, all right, that's about $3,300 a month. That's gross income. If your rent is $1,000, your car payment doesn't count car insurances, doesn't count maintenance. This is payment for your debt to income ratio. Your car payment's $340, $345, and you have $100 in minimum payments. It doesn't ask the total amount, it's minimum payments. If you divide that total number into $3,300, that's about a debt to income ratio of about 43%. With that the case, you can buy a house. You know, you can buy a house, I think, up to about $200,000. So understand your debt to income ratio, build a relationship with a banker, and work on your credit rating. Again, your goal, this is going to be our goal for 2021. By the time we get to 22, our credit number is going to be 700. And let me share this with you. If your credit number is 700, you can purchase about anything you want to purchase, just about, at about the interest rate you want to get it at. Again, whether it be 728, a person with a credit number of 820 and a person with a credit number of 720 can do about the same thing. They just want to see that you're a person that will keep his word and do what you say you're going to do. All right? Find out what you can afford. Go and see them. Be prepared. Get your money together. That way, let me tell you, the housing market is hot right now. So if you go and see a banker, you get pre-approved, you do all your homework. It may take you 3 or 4 months depending on where you are credit-wise, but you understand what you need to do. Now, when a house comes to market, you can put a bid on it right away and you can be a homeowner. Be a homeowner, because that is everything you do. That's probably the primary way that you can build wealth, is to own property. All right. The next question, most frequently asked question. All right? I'm not going to spend a lot of time because I want to go on a couple more today. Student loans. If there are a number of things that happen in America that I believe is wrong. And I could spend the next 30 minutes going through all of those. All of us, if you're black, have experienced racial profiling. I've been stopped by police a couple of times, just being black, driving a nice car. It's happened to me. This ain't hearsay. It's happened to me. We've been profiled in where we could live and things we could do, and opportunities have not been as openly provided to us as some of the other ethnicities. But here's another thing, and this has nothing to do with race, this one, that I think is a shame, and that's student loans. I think it's a shame that in a country as wealthy as America, that if an 18-year-old kid is trying to do the right thing, wants to go to school, wants to go to college, that when he gets out on an average, they're $35,000 in debt, that's wrong. That's wrong. We should want to make an investment in these kids, because when you make an investment in them, guess where the money's going? It's going right back into the economy. There is $1.4 trillion in credit card debt in America today. $1.4 trillion. What if, now this is way out, but I think it would be great. What if all that $1.4 trillion could be paid off today? Where would that money go? That 1.4 trillion is about the equivalent to the buying power of every African American in America. What? 1.4 trillion. That money would go right back into the economy, and they're going to get the money back anyway. You know, it's just a fact. So what do? There's a lot of things you can do for repayment as it relates to credit card debt. Some are, some have fixed. Make sure that you have the right terms. Some are called IBRs, income based, when it comes to paying off student loans. Some are standard repayments, but there's a lot of ways. But I'm going to suggest. I have 20 of them here. I'm not going to go over all of them. But I suggest that you look and you find for different ways of managing and paying back your student loan debts, of managing and paying back. Always pay something. Do not allow them to upset your credit rating. Another question. How are credit ratings created? I'm gonna be brief on this. Credit ratings are created, number one, by payment history. If you pay your bills on time, you will get a good credit rating. You just will. What it tells you and what it tells a creditor is that you are a person of your word. That if I give you $100 and you say you're going to pay me back $20 a month until I get it paid back, that you do what you say you're going to do. Number two is credit utilization. How much of your credit are you using? Rule of thumb is try not to use any more, at the very most, 30% of credit that you have approved. If you can keep it under 10, keeping it under 10 can get you from 650 to 710 on your credit rating. I'm telling you, don't use a credit card or use credit just because it's there. All right? There's techniques you can use to improve it. One day in Money Matters, we'll go over those. 15% is the age of your credit. So the longer that you've had credit, and the longer, for an example, if you bought a car and it was a 60-month loan and you paid that off, that's 5 years of history. There are certain credit cards that you've had for years and you've paid them on time. That's 15% of your number. 10% is your credit mix. That's credit card, home mortgage, auto loan, maybe an installment loan that you've had different folks in different industry willing to give you credit. That's 10%. And finally, 10% is credit inquiries. Credit inquiries don't hurt you as much as people believe they do. They really don't, not much, but it is 10% of your credit. If your number is 680 and you're trying to get it to 700, then minimize your credit inquiries, because your 680 can turn into 670, which makes it difficult to get to 700. So there are ways to do it. Call me. I got a company that I work with that can help you with getting your credit number up. Finally, today, and I have a ton more questions we'll do next week, but finally today, we're going to talk about retirement tips by age demographic. And this is from Chris Hogan's. And Chris and Dave Ramsey and a couple of they're kind of in the same group. And this is what he said. I thought it was interesting. So what do you do to prepare for retirement? Say, if you're in your 20s, dream big. Dream big. The world is out there. You can accomplish anything that you want. Please stay away from people who do this. And well, what's that? They're putting guardrails on your perspective. Be around people who do this, because it's so wide. When you're in your 20s, dream big. There's so much for you. There are so many opportunities. I'm telling you, if you go and you look for them, you're willing to work at it. You got to work. But you can accomplish so many things if you work. Find good mentors who can help you. Who is that person that you can go to that's going to give you good advice, that's going to teach you how to interview? I managed radio stations for 30 years. People out of college couldn't interview. They taught you all this practical information. They didn't teach you how to interview. They didn't teach you how to go get a job. When people come to me, I can teach them how to get a job, how to position. I'm going to use my children again. My children know how to go and get a job because their father has taught them how to do it, how to ask questions. My young son, one of my twins, just went to get a job just recently. He used my favorite closing statement, and the guy said to him, "Wow, that was good." You daggone right. It's what you say and it's how you say it. In your 30s, do some of the same things, but watch this. This is what Chris said. Stay away from stupid. Lord knows I wish somebody told me this when I was in my 30s. Stay away from stupid. Don't do things that's going to get in your way. Start to invest money. Start working toward saving 15%. I'm telling you, what you do in your 30s will have a direct reflection on what happens when you're in your 60s. Money grows exponentially. Interest is compounded. 10% of $2,000 and 10% of $200,000 is two different numbers entirely. That's how money grows. On the other end, that's how credit cards get you, by compounding interest. That's why you have to pay more than minimum payments on credit cards. Got to. First of all, don't use them. But if you got to use them, pay more minimum payment. In your 40s, make investment a priority. Give to your church. Start giving to your church in your 20s. Work your way up in your 30s. Remember, the goal biblically is giving 10% of your gross income to God. And I'm telling you, the return that you get from that will be far beyond anything you could have ever imagined. I feel so good when I can give to others. In your 40s, you've got to start to give back. You've got to, and you've got to make it so invest in yourself, invest in your stock market in any ways that you want to invest, and be sure that you thank God for getting him to where you are today. In your 50s, you better, if you haven't started saving, so all you people who are watching this in their 50s and you haven't started saving, start saving. Hopefully, your children are working their way out of your house. They're out of school if they were in school. Hopefully, that's extra money. Now you can start double up on investing. A lot of people don't. I personally, I like the stock market, but I don't put it all in the stock market. You don't invest it all. It's your risk tolerance. But over time, stocks have always gone up. Now, in 2007 and 8, it took a big drop. If you panicked and you got out, you lost. Now, if you were 75, 80 years old and it dropped, then you're in bad shape. So if you're 75 and 80 years old, don't risk that much. But if you're in your 50s, I'm telling you, it's going to come back. Because one thing about this country, they are not going to allow the stock market to stay down. Too many people got money in it. 45%, I think last statistic, 45%, if not more, of all Americans have some money tied into the stock market, whether it be their 401ks or whatever. In your 60s, it is never too late. It's never too late. Start working on a transition where you can transition from employment to retirement. But don't do this. Don't completely depend on Social Security. Social Security was not designed for it to be your total source of income. Now, let me say this about, so we could spend some time on that, but my time is running out. It's your daggone money. They're not giving you anything. You've invested in Social Security since you started working. And the way you get Social Security, you've got to earn 40 credits, which means, and we'll get into that one other day, it means that you've worked at least over 10 years in order to qualify, in order to get Social Security. So I'm not telling you it's not your daggone money, because if you're taking that money and investing in the stock market, you probably have a ton more. But I'm telling you, you can't completely depend on Social Security. Now, do you take it at 62? Or, for me, in my age, for full retirement, it's 66 and 4 months. Well, I'm not going to get into reasons why I haven't taken it, but remember, if you take it as, remember this, I'm going to leave you with this as it relates to Social Security, because I get these questions too. If you take it at 62, you're only getting 75% of your benefit, give or take a percent or so. And that's the amount that you're stuck with, other than they do give you cost of living increases on an average about 2% a year, every year, all right? And that's what you're stuck with. If you take it at 62, the maximum amount of money you can earn over that is about $18,300. So anything that you earn over $18,000, if you still got to work, over $18,300, for every dollar you make, they take $1 away from your Social Security. It's a big old penalty. So take it at 62 if you don't have to work no more. If you don't have to work no more, take it at 62. You won't get it back. If you got to work, I don't believe you take it at 62. Because the penalty is going to be too big on that money. Now, there's no guarantee that you're going to live to be 80 years old. I mean, those are the risks that you take. But there are methods, and depending on the individual. Another thing in closing as it relates to Social Security, it does not count your investment money. That's because at age 30 you started investing money, and now you're 62, and now that money, because you invested it all those years, now you're sitting on over $500,000 in extra money that you can pinch off of every now and then to support your money, to support your Social Security, but that does not count toward your earned income. Well, I hope you learned a lot. Oh, let me say this. Let me conclude by saying this. If you have any questions you want me to address, it's been a fun day today, hasn't it? If you have any questions you want me to address in the future, send your questions to kymedia@ssclive.org. That's kymedia@ssclive.org. Send your questions to me. Let me know what you want me to answer. If I don't know it, I'll find it out, or maybe bring an expert in that can explain better than me. Have a good day, and remember this: God loves you, and so do we. Rude to the bruh.